Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and knock this out. All right, first question. I may be wrong, but I think I remember you saying that front squats put less pressure on the spine than back squats. Is this true, and if so, why? I'm trying to limit compression of my lower back, but hate leg presses and hack squats. Cheers. Yeah, because you use less weight. On average, someone who trains both a back squat and a front squat can usually only front squat around 85% of what they back squat. It's what most coaches will tell you. So in other words, if you back squat 400 pounds, 80% of that would be approximately 340? Yeah, did I do the math right in my head? 340? So 60 less pounds of weight on your spine. Yeah, there's less compressive stress. What I would wonder, though, is why are you trying to limit the compression? Is there a problem going on? What's the deal? Because what you also need to remember is that all of these exercises are going to give you less muscular development also. I mean, front squats are a great exercise, but they're not going to give you as much total muscle mass as a back squat will. Maybe in your legs they'll be pretty similar. But again, your back, your hips, some of that stuff, they're not going to get work quite as well. Your quads will. Your quads absolutely will. But the other stuff, not so much. And obviously, the leg presses and hack squats don't work anything but like the legs and glutes. So you're not going to get a whole lot out of those. I'm not a big fan of those. But back to the other point, you do make sure that you have a real reason for doing this. I'm assuming maybe there's some sort of injury or back problem or whatever. Just be aware, though, that front squats can pull you forward a lot more. If you're not careful, you have to stay very upright. So that's also another factor as far as possibly less shear stress as well. So again, back squats are perfectly fine for most people, though, on your back. It's just a matter of what your training history is and injury. So I'll assume you have a good reason for that. So yeah, it just simply put, it has to do with 15% less weight. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I'm an intermediate lifter, weight 155 pounds at 5'8". My max lifts are currently squat 250, bench 225, and deadlift 305. I'm doing a program based on a few of the major exercises. Do you think the split will get me from intermediate to advanced? Day 1, squat, bench, curls. Day 2, deadlifts, overhead press, pull-ups. Rest 1 day and repeat day 1 and 2. If not, what can I do to make my program better? Thanks, Jason. All right, your squat is actually not very good. Your bench is the only lift that really I'm looking at you for a 5'8" guy. So you're an inch shorter than me. 5'8", 155. You need to put some muscle on, bro. You're not really. I wouldn't count you as a true intermediate, probably. Not with a 250 squat at 5'8". Now, if you were 5'3", 5'2", a 250 squat, wouldn't be bad. But no, you need to go on a better program. Why aren't you squatting every time you're in the gym? Why aren't you squatting every time you're in the gym? I mean, your squat's 250, brother. You need to run a proven program. You need to run a program to get your squat up. You need to put on more muscle, because if you're 155 pounds at 5'8", unless you are shredded, like I'm talking 9% body fat, there's no way you've made all your noob gains. There's no way you've made all your noob gains. Probably your upper body's probably decent size, with a 225 bench. But no, your overall size is going to be lacking. You need to up the food. You need to get on a proper structured program, and you need to go ahead and get to that squat up past 300. You need to get your deadlift past 400. So again, I also wonder, what does your pull-ups weight look like? What do your rows look like? Again, you need to get those numbers up. You're not really where I would throw someone on a true intermediate program, and I certainly wouldn't have you only squat every other session at this point. Your squat is lagging extremely. You really need to bring that up, and you're only going to do that, and you're only going to put on more size doing it by increasing your squat frequency on a proper program and knocking down more food. All right, next question. When doing a barbell behind the head kick out or skull crushers, how you feel about pausing the bar on the bench and putting it back over your face? I look at it as kind of like a pause rep on the chest, except it's pausing on the bench behind the head and going back up with it for the triceps and shoulders. Thanks. No, I don't think you should be doing this. If you're going to do a skull crusher, the whole purpose of skull crushers is the fact that you can get a stretch reflex on the long head of the tricep. If you weren't getting something beneficial out of it, you would just do more closed grip bench pressing and dips for your triceps, right? You wouldn't need to do something like this. So this whole kick out thing, I think you're losing range of motion, and I think you're losing a stretch reflex on the tricep. I kind of would throw this back into the category of a goof off exercise. Now, it doesn't matter if you've seen some amazing lifter do it. It's kind of like we talk about stuff with the Spoto press or whatever. Eric Spoto would have had a 700 bench press had he never done a Spoto press, right? And that's not going to be the secret to getting you to a 700 bench press, I can assure you. You should probably go ahead and get to 500 first before you figure out how you got to 7. But a lot of these extra accessory movements, I'm not saying they don't help, but sometimes you'll see people come up with silly stuff that's not really even the most effective exercise they could be doing. But because their overall work and they get enough right, and maybe they're on enough drugs and have the right genetics, they end up being amazing lifters in spite of doing one or two really silly things, right? I just don't see what you're trying to do with this exercise. It's just a partial, you're limiting range of motion, and again, you're losing the whole stretch reflex on the tricep. That was the only reason you should be putting the bar behind your head anyways, right? Again, you need to be going further than the bench. You need to get that stretch. Again, otherwise, what are you trying to accomplish? Just do some closed grip bench press. All right, next question. Hi, I am on a program where you do 5x5 on the big compound lift, starting with 70% at week 1 and ending with 85% at week 15 if all goes as planned. Does the first 4 weeks with 70 to 77.5% give anything, or is it too light? Well, look, if you're new to a whole training protocol, you're going to get a novel training response. And even 5 sets of 5 on a big lift with 70% is a pretty reasonable amount of workload. And yes, you need to be able to accumulate work. In other words, if you think that you're just going to come in and train to failure with your 5x5 every single workout, and that's the best way to make progress, then you're sadly mistaken. No, you need to be able to have a way to progress. And if it's taking you from 70% up to 85% over 15 weeks, yeah, that's pretty reasonable. That's a 15% increase. Even if it started too light, that's totally reasonable. Now, I'm assuming you're not a novice, because if you're a novice lifter, if you're in your first year of serious training, no, that's not going to be enough. In other words, if you're starting with 200 pounds on a barbell squat and you're only increasing that 15%, from again 70% up to 85%, so you're going to be hitting what? 230. 15 weeks in, that's not acceptable. But if you're starting with, say, 315, 350 for 5 sets of 5, and it takes you up 15%, that's pretty good, because you're probably not a noob anymore. So it really depends on where you're at. If you're weak and still building a base, no, this is just way, way, way too slow in general. But if you're closer to being an intermediate lifter, I don't think it's unreasonable. I think it should work just fine. Remember, you have to have a starting point that is below your maximum recoverable volume. You have to, or you're not going to progress. All right, next question and last question of the week. Will you ever come back to the UK even for a vacation? Absolutely not. No, not until your current government is completely removed out of power. I won't do it. Number one, I feel like my free speech was extremely restricted in the UK. I basically had a gag order put on me discussing scientific research. And you need to understand that. The High Court put a gag order on me with threat of jail time for discussing peer-reviewed scientific research. You better let that sink in. And then you're seeing all these other infringements of free speech in the UK that's been all over the news. I'm sorry, it's a tyrannical regime, and I will not support that country. I will not support its government, and I want nothing to do with it. And it's the country itself. It's not the people. I met a lot of really good people in the UK. I have friends back in the UK. I mean, I had people who I thought were just amazing, awesome people who I met over there. And I still am in contact with a few of them, So it's nothing against the people there. The problem is your government. The restrictions on free speech, the restrictions on people's rights to be armed, the excessive taxation. No, I just don't ever want to go into that country again. I legally have a right to do so. There's silly myths and rumors that I was deported. If anyone were to be able to check the immigration database, I technically have an indefinite leave to remain. I do not require a visa or anything else to walk into that country right now. I have a long-term card that lets me walk into it. That's valid for quite a few more years still. So I think it expires in like 2023 or something like that. I'd have to renew it and pay several £1,000s to the British government to renew it. But no, I have an indefinite leave to remain card. I could walk back into the UK anytime I want legally. But I see the country itself as part of a tyrannical regime, and as long as that government, with all its restrictions on people and restrictions on freedoms and free speech, including even the ability to discuss science, which is what I experienced personally, if none of that is removed and they don't change the way they're doing things, I just simply don't support that tyrannical regime, and I don't want to enter that country again, even though I legally can at any time. And there's nothing for me to see there. I've seen all the important sites. The only thing I care about there is some of the awesome people I met, but I'm not going to travel all the way across an ocean again just to hang out with some cool people that I know. You know, that's just reality. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.